Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Carter. I'm the emergency response meteorologist with the National Weather Service. It is Monday, June 29th, and it is 10 o'clock in the morning. We are going to be seeing some very extreme and prolonged dangerous heat set to move in mid to late week and then last all the way through the 4th of July weekend and even stretching into early next week. That is by far the top story, especially as we are heading into the holiday weekend, just given all of the activities and things happening statewide here because of the not only the 4th, but given its significance of being the 250th anniversary. So that is where our focus should be. Limited rainfall expected this week. We do have some minor storm chances. Severe weather is really not a focus at all, but in the grand scheme of things, we're not going to get too much rainfall, even with a few storm chances. So the weather pattern that we have right now, we started off this morning a little bit cloudy, a little drizzly for some, a few leftover showers. But generally speaking, today is actually going to be slightly below our average temperatures, mainly because we have a lot of cloud cover. We'll see a little bit of sunshine peeking out, still a few isolated showers, but again, about a little bit cooler than normal is what we can expect today. Tomorrow, dry and less humid, temperatures right around where they should be for late June. And then Wednesday is really that turning point that we start that heat wave and then it intensifies later in the week through the weekend. One caveat that you will notice, kind of setting the heat aside that I mentioned storm chances, it is really good that we are not seeing extreme heat and also severe weather chances because, that could definitely be a lot to handle, but the heat is definitely the focus as we are going through the next few days. Before I focus a little bit more on the heat, I did want to plug the tropical weather outlook because I know when the National Hurricane Center puts anything on the map anywhere near Virginia, there are some alarm bells that go off just by the act of them putting something on the map. But I will say, that there is a very disorganized area of showers and thunderstorms right off the coast of the Carolinas. It'll certainly bring some cloud cover. It might organize a little bit more. We'll keep an eye on it, but right now, this is expected to remain south of us the whole time. It might get a little bit cloudy, maybe a few showers from it, but we're not expecting impacts here in Virginia. Not any flooding rains, not any coastal flooding, and really the chance for formation of anything tropical itself is quite low. Through 48 hours, it's only at about a 10% chance, and it's that same 10% chance of formation through the next 7 days as well. But extreme heat, really the key message here. Not only is it extreme, it's going to be prolonged. So we're kicking things off Wednesday, and this graph goes through Sunday, kind of focusing on the holiday weekend. But I will say it does not break come Monday. It's going to last through early next week as well. So we have a long stretch of very intense heat. And the problem with this heat is not only is it really hot during the day, we're adding in humidity as we do here in summertime in Virginia. So we're getting that heat index of 105 up to 110 plus for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and even into Sunday. And then overnight, when we want to see things cool down a little bit and give us some relief, it's just not going to cool down too much. We're looking at overnight lows in the 70s for most of the Commonwealth. So you'd think that that would be a break, but unfortunately, it's just not enough of a break overnight, especially for those who have, don't have access to cooling shelter or air conditioning. It's going to be really rough on those folks. And just putting this kind of into perspective, this heat wave has the potential of being the most significant heat wave in both the magnitude or how hot it is and duration since July of 2012 for most of our area. So that really puts into perspective that, yeah, it's hot. Normally it's hot in July in Virginia, but that really sets the tone for things. So this just goes into pretty granular detail. I'm not going to go over everything here, but the left side of your screen, that chart shows maximum temperature. What is our air temperature going to be? What is the thermometer going to read? But remember, when we're talking about humidity, that number doesn't really matter when it doesn't feel like that. What does it actually feel like on our skin? That's what we want to know. And that is going to be really extreme. You will see those numbers in the triple digits almost statewide. Even on the quote unquote cool end of things, you will see upper 90s for heat index values. So right now, the National Weather Service isn't within that time frame of being able to issue heat advisories quite yet, but they're definitely coming. I can promise you that. We have heat index values up to 110, 100, maybe even up to 113, 114 degrees in a few locations. So it's going to be downright hot for those celebrating out for the 4th. And you see Friday, Saturday, Sunday backs off maybe a little bit, but still very extreme. Now, what are the actual impacts to folks, to systems, most of us emergency managers, at least in some landscape that I'm talking to on this call here? So this is NWS heat risk forecast. It essentially takes into factor a lot of different factors. So the things that heat risk takes into consideration is how unusually above normal temperatures is this heat wave? Is this normal for Virginia? It also takes into account humidity. Different parts of the country have more humidity than others at different times of the year. It takes into effect the time of the year. So yeah, it's July. So is this normal, or is this more intense than typical July heat and humidity in Virginia? It also takes into account the duration of the heat, and of course, we care about how it impacts people. So it's if those temperatures reach levels that pose a risk for heat complications, and that data is supported by the CDC. So a lot of factors go into this. And you will see that the NWS heat risk forecast beginning the left side of your screen is this Thursday. Most of the Commonwealth in that major category, you see a few locations in Northern Virginia and Southwest Virginia dipping into the extreme, but the legend is at the bottom of your screen there. So heat affects anyone without effective cooling or adequate hydration. Impacts are very likely to health systems, heat sensitive industries, and infrastructure. And then we crank it up to extreme impacts beginning on Friday for most of the Commonwealth, and that really remains the same for Saturday. And then you can see the heat bubble starting to shift eastward a little bit come Sunday, but it is still very present. So it's going to be a long duration. One plug that I did want to mention here is our state partners over at the Virginia Department of Health have made a great dashboard here of cooling centers that you can search. This has just gone live, from my understanding, fairly recently. I will say they hopefully they make they know that the heat is coming and they can put this right on their homepage to find easily. I knew that it existed, but it took me a while. I did have to Google VDH and cooling centers for it to pop up. It wasn't easy for me to find on their website, but it is a great tool. And if you're looking for cooling shelters and centers to pass along to your community, this is a great resource. It's just always important to remember that you should still call to verify before, because these cooling centers happen to open and close kind of, I don't want to say on a whim, but you just want to make sure that the information that you're passing along to people, you aren't sending them to somewhere that is closed. But it is a great resource for that. All right, now that being said, setting that aside, the last thing that I'll mention is just getting a view of those overnight lows. So you'll see that even Thursday through that Sunday time range, the coolest that we get is low 70s, most of us staying in the mid to overnight 70s. And even if you have windows open, the heat of the day is not going to help those who don't have air conditioning. So the focus should be on vulnerable populations, certainly the very young, the very elderly, those who have complex medical conditions. This will certainly put a strain on our infrastructure in terms of our power grid. So that is something that we also need to keep in mind. In rainfall forecast, I mentioned a few, maybe a little isolated storm chances this week. That's definitely not the focus. Severe weather not expected. So at least that's one thing that we don't have to put in our worry bucket this week. But given the ongoing drought, it's not great for us given all of the heat that we're seeing and the lack of rainfall. So we are going to be hurting in the drought sense And we'll see how this kind of plays out with the drought update later on this week. We'll see that come out on Thursday. Looking a little bit farther ahead to the extended forecast, unfortunately, I wish I had better news here that we'll see a break from the heat and humidity coming up. But even the more mid-range to slightly extended range 8 to 14 day outlook looks like we're in the thick of it. It is summertime in Virginia, and it is summering, that is for sure. The good news is hopefully that period of July 6th through the 12th brings us a little bit more rain once we get through the holiday weekend, because we desperately need it. But take care of yourself, your elderly neighbors, give folks a call just to make sure that their air conditioning is working. And yeah, let's do what we can to stay cool this week and stay safe. Thanks, everyone. We will have more updates throughout the week because of this extreme heat, but have a great 4th of July weekend.